Hi everyone, we're back. So today we're going to be reading chapter 2 of All the Way to the River by Elizabeth Gilbert. I guess I didn't give you any sort of intro to it yesterday. I'm assuming you can just, you know what it is if you're here watching. If not, you can just Google it. Also, I did notice that I tend to stare off when I'm thinking, when I'm talking, and I'll probably keep doing it. But I'll try my best not to. Okay, so first chapter that I read, it really set the groundwork for none of this was Elizabeth's fault. She establishes that in the first chapter through Rayya, through Rayya's voice, through Rayya's deceased voice. So Rayya has already passed on, and she's experiencing a visitation from Rayya on her 54th birthday, and Rayya has all this stuff to say to her. And also, does anyone else notice that Rayya speaks like a teenage boy from 1987? But it's like this weird combination of it's like what a middle-aged person thinks that a teenager sounds like. It's like when a middle-aged person who doesn't actually hang out with teenagers writes a teenager and their dialogue. That's how it sounded to me. Hey baby dude. Oh my God, your God is lit. What? I don't know any middle-aged woman who's speaking like this. If I did know one, I would think that she was crazy. And I'm wondering, is this actually how she spoke? Or is this just Elizabeth Gilbert's version of this woman? Because how would we know? Like, I never knew her. I haven't looked online to see if there are any interviews or if there's anything. I know there's a documentary that's going to be coming out if it isn't already out, but that's what I would be most interested in at this moment in a documentary is like, did Rayya actually talk like this? Hey, baby dude, my little sunshine baby. Like, I'm telling you, if my boyfriend called me his sunshine baby, okay, I might think it was cute, but it isn't in this. I don't know. It's like, okay. So she establishes right off, this is not her fault. According to Rayya, none of this is her fault. She did what she was supposed to do. It was all this big cosmic plan. So her enabling Rayya, an addict who, as far as I know, was in recovery or had not been using, her enabling Rayya to then use again and procure her all of her drugs and her needles and this and that, and just really be an enabler, is not her fault. It was part of a cosmic plan. And Rayya's mother understands and is thankful and loves her for it. Guys, as a mother myself, I can tell you that in this life or the next life, if something like that happens to my children at the hand of their partner who's supposed to love and care for them, no matter how well-intentioned that partner was, my message from beyond the grave would not be like, thank you, I understand what you were trying to do, and I love you. I'd be like, what the heck were you thinking? You were the person when in my stead who was supposed to look after this precious, precious child. So I think personally that is a very manipulative way to begin a story such as this. Sets the tone. Okay. chapter 2. And as with yesterday, I am not reading ahead. I am reading this for the first time with you. So all reactions are honest. Although it may mean that I'm a little slower on the uptick because I have to then like go away, process it, and think about it and come back. Also, today was Thanksgiving here in Canada, and if I look like I'm a basket case, it's because I am. I just cooked dinner and it's all over, and I'm exhausted. So before I fall into my post-dinner stupor. Hi. Okay. This chapter is entitled, When People Ask Me Who Was Rayya. I might butcher this name, and I apologize. Rayya Mokdesi Elias. Born in Syria, raised in Detroit, forged on the Lower East Side of New York City. Rayya, who came to America at the age of 7 from the beautiful, vibrant city of Aleppo, where her family had been affluent and glamorous, and where, in her memory, there was always music and dancing and flowers everywhere. Rayya, who, after arriving in cold, foreign, winter-dark Michigan, never felt quite at home anywhere again. Rayya, who always felt too Middle Eastern to be American and too American to be Middle Eastern, who spoke just enough Arabic to argue with cab drivers, but whose only consistent nod to her background was always to pre-order the halal meals on airplanes, despite having been raised as an Orthodox Christian. That shit's just fresher, yo. Okay, that is quoting, apparently, Rayya. So maybe she just did talk like that. Rayya, whose traditional and hard-working immigrant parents could never make sense of this wild youngest child of theirs, who was utterly ungovernable, who hated to study, hated to work, who was a loving and affectionate child, but also the most disobedient, who was a radiant performer, a clown, a star, with a face that was always bathed in light, who never stopped making her parents laugh and never stopped making them cry, who, by the age of 13, was already skipping school to drive across state lines with older friends in order to see Led Zeppelin in concert, while high on acid, which she was also selling. Okay. Now, no judgment against Rayya. But when I hear of children, like 13 is a child. I was still playing make-believe when I was 13. And a lot of kids are, even if they pretend that they're not. In their heart of hearts, when they're alone, they are. When parents somehow get, and it can happen for a lot of reasons. You can just be so busy, you're working so hard to get food on the table that you're just hoping that your kids aren't getting into trouble and this and that, but come on. Rayya, who described herself as an ex-junkie, ex-felon, post-punk glamour butch dyke, who was closeted until her early 20s because there was no place for her queerness in the Syrian Orthodox community of 1970s Detroit, where girls did not traditionally leave their parents' homes until they were successfully married to doctors and lawyers from within the Arab immigrant fold, who, growing up, was considered too masculine to be beautiful by the standards of the day, but too female to be offered the freedoms that her brothers and boy cousins enjoyed, who always felt shamed and excluded, who didn't know what she was till she started seeing people like Elton John, David Bowie, and Freddie Mercury on TV, and then wanted to become them. Rayya, who was gorgeous, who was stunning, who identified as an androgyny, who had the dark eyes and dramatic cheekbones of heroes in Persian illuminated manuscripts, whose haircut was always something between the punked-out skater do of a little boy and a Japanese anime adventure, and a badass Keith Richards shag, whose face changed from male to female, from wise to playful, from timeless to childish as the light shifted. You know, I wonder how her family feels about Elizabeth Gilbert describing her and having so much to say. I bet they don't like it. Also, my neighbor is playing loud music, so apologies if you can hear it. It's like doom, 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 doom. The other thing that it makes me think is, if Elizabeth Gilbert is a narcissist, I'm not saying one way or the other, but I know lots of other people are saying, if she were a narcissist, I know that the way that she is describing this person would be, in actuality, a person she would hate, that she would actually resent. If this person, if Rhea was so illuminated and so, beautiful and stunning and, someone that you could just has this magnetism about them, that would drive someone who was a narcissist crazy, because that would then take the attention away from them. And a narcissist, it's usually, in my experience, a narcissist at first loves to have a partner that, is beautiful and intelligent, that people want to be around because that reflects well on them. But then eventually they grow to resent it because those very same qualities that reflect well on them also take the attention away from them. So anyway, Rhea, whom I could stare at all day and never get bored. Rhea, who was an outrageously talented musician, writer, filmmaker, and hairdresser, who could make friends with any musical instrument, who was an electrifying performer with a muscular, beautiful, 3-octave wide voice, who struggled, however, with insecurity, addiction, shame, and creative paralysis, and never became as successful as she wanted to be. That to me seems like a dig. But maybe I'm reading too deeply into it. But I can tell you right now that if I was writing about my loved one, I would leave that out. Personally. Not because I don't think that, to be honest, you have to say that. I feel like that's a little dig, because Elizabeth Gilbert is very successful. So then to say, oh, she never really accomplished anything. Sure, she was beautiful and engaging, and she could play any instrument, and she was extremely talented, and she had a voice with great range, and, blah, blah, blah. But she was just didn't quite make it. Well, who nonetheless made independent films that were shown at the Berlin International Film Festival, and who never stopped writing songs, and who published a brilliant memoir that was about, of all things, recovery from addiction. Rhea, who once lost a 6-figure record deal because she told a Sony executive to suck her dick. Rhea, who was her own worst enemy. Who was her own only enemy. Okay. Again, I feel like we're setting things up. Rhea was her only enemy, not me. Sure, I enabled her. Sure, I wasn't the kind of partner I should have been, but we've already established that was not my fault. It was part of the plan of both of our lives for this to happen. And Rhea only had one enemy, and that was herself. Who got herself into an astonishing amount of trouble during the course of her life, but could talk her way out of anything. Who once told a sentencing judge, "Sir, I deserve justice, but I am humbly asking you today for mercy." And who was granted mercy that day, because Rhea's humility, whenever she revealed it, was the most tender and irresistible thing you ever saw. Rayya, who had been in countless jails and rehabs and institutions, and who, during the infamous Tompkins Square Park riot of 1988, had been living on a bench in that park for quite a while with a needle in her arm, barely noticing the police action that was happening all around her. Rayya, who was so proud of finally getting clean and who truly believed she had done it all by herself. Okay, that's another subtle dig. She didn't say, and she did it all by herself. She said, Rayya truly believed she did it all by herself. That's a dig. Who never got past step 4 out of the 12 steps, but who still went to recovery meetings for years so she could hold court with her most dramatic overdose stories and hang out with all her old friends from the streets and the scene. Who never really admitted powerlessness over her addiction or over anything, come to think of it. Who announced after more than a decade of sobriety that she wasn't an addict anymore, so she didn't have to go to those boring meetings anymore. Who declared of her addiction, that label no longer works for me. And she's making her sound like a fool. Rayya, who graduated herself from recovery, in other words, with ultimately harrowing results. Rayya, who swore that all she ever wanted to be was good. Rayya, who was good, who was the single most foundational presence in the lives of nearly all her friends and family members, who was everybody's confidant, who stayed friends with all her exes, who was our bedrock, who had copies of everyone's keys and passwords, who came with us when it was time to negotiate deals for cars, homes, divorces, who was our mediator and our minister, who coached us through the most difficult conversations, who loved and accepted each one of us singularly, unconditionally, ferociously, who always forgave us when we fell short, who taught us how to forgive one another, who made us into better people. Rayya, who was my bodyguard, who was everyone's bodyguard, who once traveled halfway across the planet to pound on a door and physically remove a beloved friend from a relationship that had turned violent, who could disarm anyone's insanity, except, as it turned out, her own. Rayya, quick to fight, quick to cry, quick to laugh, quick to forgive, an insecure individualist, a fiery Aries with a marshmallow heart, a sentimental cynic, an unfailingly honest master manipulator. I think we're dealing with one right now. A fierce protector who somehow always had somebody taking care of her. A needy alpha who demanded solitude but could not bear to be alone. Oh my God, someone will not stop pressing their car beeper. Oh God. Rayya, whom I never saw coming, had not planned for, and could not control. Who started off as my hairdresser, then became a social acquaintance, then a friend, then a neighbor, then my best friend, and then my person, who slowly morphed into something I did not have words for anymore, because as a happily married woman, what was I supposed to do about her? Rayya, who did not so much steal my heart as gradually ease it open, until I wanted nothing more than to stay by her side forever. Rayya, who did finally become my lover, my partner, but only when we discovered that she had terminal pancreatic and liver cancer and had been given only 6 months to live. Rayya, who ended up living for 20 months after her diagnosis because she never followed anyone's rules, not even cancer's. Rayya, who let me see the softness she hid from everyone else, who had skin like washed silk, who loved having her back tickled, who curled up in my arms like a baby, who was afraid of bugs, thunder, and having to swallow pills, who was terrified of hospitals, who was always afraid she had wasted her life. Rayya, whose pain from cancer and fear of death ultimately drove her into the arms of alcohol, cigarettes, sugar, weed, Xanax, Vicodin, Ambien, codeine, morphine, trazodone, fentanyl, and cocaine. Like, does sugar need to be on that list? Does cigarettes need to be on that? Come on. Rayya. Oh, sorry. Yes, Rayya, whose return to active drug addiction made the last few months of her life a living hell for everyone involved. Whose relapse drove me so far into insanity that I once seriously contemplated murdering her because I believed she was killing me. Rayya, who broke my heart. Rayya, who loved me the most, whom I loved the most. Rayya, who died in my arms. Rayya, whose name means fragrant breeze in Arabic, but who was more like a shattering comet. Rayya, who was a legend to all who knew her, who was the person everybody wanted to hang out with, party with, play with, sleep with, travel with, dress like, confide in, imitate. Rayya, who always kicked people out of the house at the end of the party, even if it wasn't her house. Rayya, who was the one everyone followed home, who was the one everyone fell into, who was the one I fell into, the way a whitewater rafter falls off a boat and gets sucked into a whirlpool and is never seen by their family again. Another dig. Rayya, who had a face made for drowning in. Rayya. I still sometimes have trouble saying her name and breathing at the same time. And now we have a poem. Where is comfort to be found? Not in the singing, not in the songs. Sometimes in the sound that the mourning doves make in the trees beside the home where you lived with her for just one summer. For just that one summer, when all the days were long. My brave, tired child, the simple answers have never worked for you, because you know they are not true. The only thing that can hold you now must hold everything else too. Now is the time for you to see that all the grief and all the pain and all the shame are just children looking for a home, the same way you are, the same way that she was. Now is the time for you to understand that nothing does not belong to God, and nothing does not come home to God, and nothing does not live forever within the giant nameless space that you have always called God. Not your broken cries, not her final goodbye, and certainly not the mourning doves. Nothing belongs here, my love. Everything belongs here, my love, or nothing does. Well, that's chapter 2. Okay, 23 minutes. That was short. Should we read the next one? It's short. Let's go for it. This one's entitled All the Way to the River. Rayya liked to use a map of downtown New York City as the operative metaphor for her friendships and relationships. The way she explained it was this. First, she said, you've got your Fifth Avenue friends who are right in the center of the map. These are the people you're completely artificial with. You only let them see your surface, and they only let you see their surface. These are your social friends and your professional contacts. Everyone's trying to impress each other. No one is telling the truth. None of the Fifth Avenue friend group really know one another or want to be known. Oh, you know what? I can't do it. Let's do this tomorrow. God. All right, let's go back a little bit. So we read, a little poem. Okay, great. Rayya, 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 Rayya. I just can't get over the thought that her family reading this are like, excuse me? I've read plenty of partners write about their deceased loved one. Some with very complicated pasts and addictions and predilections. And never have I read something like that. It's the undermining the undermining. So it can, I don't even know if I would call this subtle. You know, Rayya, who really believed that she went through recovery and was successful all on her own work. She really believed that. That's crazy, right? Yeah, she believed that. Wow. Because you'd say, you know, she went through it and she did it. She worked hard and she got it done. Yeah. Yeah. I'm so tired today. I don't have a whole lot to add, but it's so far more about, when it comes to their relationship, it's more about how Rayya messed up Elizabeth so far. And even she said, I thought of murdering her, but only because she drove me so crazy. I thought she was going to kill me. That's why I thought of murdering her. Not like I thought of leaving her. Okay, that would be a normal reaction. And even not an easy one to tell people. You know, that, yeah, my partner was dying of cancer and I thought about leaving her. That would, I think, be considered quite callous on its own. But to say, I actually thought about murdering her because she was driving me so crazy with her illness and her addictions that I thought about killing her. Not just walking away. Like, that's a whole other level. That's and yet to frame it like, oh, she made me so insane. I just thought about murdering. Come on. That is wild. Okay, I hate this book. And I'm happy Thanksgiving after today. And you know how Thanksgiving goes. It's like you're killing yourself for hours and then you eat and it's over in 20 minutes and then all the cleanup, and I'm just happy to be home. So I'm gonna go chill out and watch some YouTube or something, and I'll be back again tomorrow, hopefully a little more lively, hopefully with more things to add. Yeah, let me know what you think. If you could please comment, if you could please like and subscribe, that would be so divine of you. Thank you for joining me today, and I hope to see you back here tomorrow. Bye.